Greetings and welcome, Guardians, and holy shit. We have more implications, more lore, more to prepare for, all relating to our favorite friend of the channel so far, with a bunch of deep dives and a lot of videos related to what might be going on with him, the Drifter. Now, I know that pretty much all of you have already seen online that Destiny and Bungie have really gone back to their roots in terms of putting us through this augmented reality game, or ARG, as you'll see abbreviated pretty much anywhere online when talking about this. But they had us go through a chess game. And within that chess game, if you completed all 27 puzzles, as I did and many, many others did, you would get a specific board and a specific code frequency, signal frequency, that you would then have to compare with the rest of the community to come to the end of the game. We have now hit the end of that game, gotten the final chessboard, gotten a new cutscene, but also, as we went through and completed all of the challenges, we got new lore pages for a book specifically written by Drifter called Tales of a Wanderer. Now, there are a lot of things that I've already discussed that do come into play and are absolutely connected to Drifter's lore, Drifter's history, and kind of where we can clear some of these things up. And I'll also go over where I think we might be going. If it maybe leads us or is showing us that we may be going to somewhere the Drifter has been. We may be following his past, especially with the cutscene that we got, but we'll get into all of that here. And where I first wanted to start off is the most important part about doing these chess puzzles and then also going through and completing everything to get this book, The Tales of the Wanderer. You had to collect 60 chess pieces. Now, why is that important? Well, there were 11 chess pieces that you found outside of the Dreadnought around in the universe of Destiny here. And each one of those chess pieces actually coincide with the Tales of the Wanderer book and shows us what Drifter was doing in the time that he assumed Eris was dead. And so we're going to go over each of the locations that he was at, how he was feeling, some details that it may connect to, and then kind of see how that connects to moving forward, especially with going into Edge of Fate that now has been kind of leaked by their collector's edition being uploaded to everything, that will be coming to us in July on the 15th, which is really, really close, less than 2 months away, something like that. So let's get into it, everybody, and start talking some more about Drifter. So, as mentioned, we're going to start with page 1 of Tales of a Wanderer. Page 1 is labeled as Lingering, and it says, "He lingers in the entryway. It's the sort of lingering where you pretend nothing's changed. And it doesn't have to. As long as you never go in, Eris will always just be out of reach, but at least there. Real in the apartment she barely used, in the city she defended, but rarely saw. It's a fool's dream, but what is he, if not a fool? So he stays a little longer, sick with wishing." Now, this page is pretty important primarily because we know that after this point and where I'm currently standing, this had to be where Drake is standing. Now, the chess piece itself isn't here. The chess piece is actually behind me and up the stairway to the roof. And I think that's kind of indicative of, where we were, since this is in the hallway before actually entering her apartment. With this, though, we know that he says he's sick with wishing, and after this, in the lore pages that we had been receiving throughout the story and throughout, episode 3 in general, that now he comes into the apartment and he, sick with wishing, begs the Ahamkara bone that Eris has always walked around with to grant him a wish of bringing Eris back. Obviously, that does not come to fruition, And there is actually a funny little voice line you may hear in the Nether if you've completed the story up until this point. So, spoilers for what I'm about to mention. But if you are in the Nether, you can hear Eris question Drifter and saying that she was hearing whispers from the Ahamkara bone that you attempted a wish. And he says, "Yeah, I shook the little bastard until, but nothing happened." And Eris says, "I'm glad it didn't." But then she asks, "What else pretty much insinuating, what else did you try?" And Drifter goes on about he tried everything he possibly could. And it's a sweet little moment because Eris does say sweet but foolish thank you, which again leads back to this page where Drifter says, "What is he if not a fool?" The next significant point is here over in the expanse of the beyond on Europa. There is a chess piece on this ledge just nearby Elsie Bray here. And with this lore page, Drifter goes into how he's feeling with being here. Expanse. Cold out here. Reminds him, in a bad way, of the light forsaken planet he nearly died on. He scuffles around the campsite. Pathetic. He knows it's pathetic. Even if people hadn't been through here, the storms would have blown over any footprints. Any lost trinkets would long since have been found or buried deep enough that he can't hope to find them. Looking out on the desolate expanse doesn't do much for him. Just leaves him alone with his feelings. Not a fun place to be. He moves on. Now, this leads to something I've mentioned in previous Drifter videos where there was a fire team that Drifter used to travel with and used to explore with. However, they came across a planet that can only be described as blistering cold. Cold enough where they would frequently freeze to death and have to be resurrected by their ghosts. The blizzards literally cut out any light from being seen. They did not allow anything but darkness to exist on this planet. Then there was a very, very dark twist that occurred with Drifter and his fire team. There were creatures that they couldn't see in the darkness and couldn't see through the blizzards that were only to be heard and sounded horrific and terrifying. But the most terrifying piece was that whenever they felt these creatures getting any closer to them, within a few meters or maybe even farther than that, if these creatures did get close, they essentially nullified light. And we mean the traveler's light in this sense. It's explained throughout the lore cards and the stories that whenever these beasts got too close, everyone's ghosts would turn off and fall to the floor. Eventually, they became paranoid and they found what is explained to be kind of like a mausoleum of sorts, similar almost to what we see out in the expanse, where it was a building that they found just an opening in and they ran in, sat down, but they saw statues in there, but they were just getting themselves out of the blizzard and away from the creatures to protect their ghosts. Due to the paranoia, unfortunately, Drifter's fire team ended up pulling their guns on each other, blaming each other, and causing all sorts of mess. Drifter, being the leader of the fire team, or pseudo-leader, based on what was kind of explained, had guns pulled on him. They thought it was his fault for taking them here and bringing them here. And Drifter finally had to tell everyone that since they don't believe him, and there's been so many issues, he made the statement of, "The next time you draw your weapon on me will be your last." Some time went on. I believe somewhere in that time frame, if I remember correctly, they lost a member out to the blizzard. They ran out there just to try and get away, and they were not heard from. Eventually, someone did end up drawing their weapons again on the fire team, and at that point, Drifter ended every single member of his fire team. He kept his promise, he kept his word. However, this is where things took a much darker twist. After he had ended the Guardians, the ghosts ran off to try and hide to come back and resurrect their Guardians. Drifter's ghost at the time then made the request to Drifter to hunt down those ghosts and final death, every single one. Drifter complied and then was told by his ghost to take the pieces of all of the other ghosts and essentially attach them to his ghost and make a new shell out of an amalgamation of all of these ghost shells. When Drifter did that, something horrible happened to his ghost. The ghost had a fit, its light went from blue to red, and his ghost no longer speaks to anyone. Now, this is incredibly relevant because his ghost seems to be able to now be the thing that can create prisms of light and solid pillars of light, which we've seen used in Gambit, in the motes of light, where I believe his ghost is what has allowed him to play Gambit this whole time. He's able to use this new power from his ghost to pretty much encase things in light, even though the ghost does not speak. And this is even more significant in some of the lore books we got in this episode, because in the lore page where Drifter tries to make the wish with the Ahamkara bone, Sloane approaches the doorway in his, grief-ridden stupor. They get into a little bit of an argument, and Sloane punches Drifter in the jaw, knocking him back against a wall and bloodying his mouth and nose. When she does that, Drifter's ghost makes an appearance, looking at him, floating around worried, but not saying a word. According to the lore page, Drifter just bats the ghost away and walks off and walks away past Sloane. That makes Sloane the second person ever to see Drifter's ghost. The only other individuals that we know for a fact have seen seen Drifter's ghost is Eris Morn, because she knows that Drifter made his ghost keep an eye on her and follow her throughout Season of the Witch. So I have the theory that from Season 14, Drifter's ghost is the Kit Bash shell that we can earn. And the reason is because everything leads up to that being his shell. It's a shell that is completely made up of other ghosts. It has a different eye of like a hammer and another tool built into it. And so for me, I truly believe that this is his ghost shell, and I have been on the hunt, as those of you who have been by the stream will know. I have been on the absolute hunt for this ghost shell through an Eververse engram to finally pretty much have the luxury of saying I have what Drifter's ghost should look like. Unless, of course, they eventually reveal it and we see something entirely different, but fingers crossed. But that is for this page. Now on to page 3. This page is labeled Schadenfreude. For those of you who don't know, Schadenfreude is a term that relates to when you get pleasure out of other people's pain, misfortune, and any other kind of unfortunate circumstance. It's mostly used to describe whenever, you may see children run around and clothesline themselves on something, or completely just faceplant into something, and there's that weird giggle that comes through where it's like, I shouldn't be laughing at their pain, but I am. And this page reads, sometimes it makes a guy feel better to make fun of someone way worse off than he is. He knows it's a mistake as soon as he sets eyes on the giant robot face, though. Maybe somewhere else. He turns and goes, ignoring the dramatic monologue already kicking off behind him. This one is quite obvious. This one is for the chess piece that is promptly placed in front of the Clovis Bray AI in the Bray Exoscience area. And, he's trying to make fun of the fact that Clovis is out there somewhere, but the only thing we have left of him is some dramatic AI that can't move, and he's forever stuck staring at the same walls, the same wires, and hearing probably the same noises over and over and over. Page 4. Unfamiliar. Pretending everything's fine was never going to work. He says he's lost a shipment of new fancy guns to get a bunch of guardians off his back and on a scavenger hunt for non-existent weapons. Give him some peace and quiet. He takes a minute to rustle around in his stuff, grabbing what he might need for maybe a longer trip. Not sure where he'd go, just not here. He swears he can see Eris leaning against the railing, a sly little smile barely turning up the corners of her mouth. He can't stand it. This one, again, pretty straightforward, is whenever we are picking up the chess piece that is currently over in Drifter's area. It's over on the shelves on the left, and he has a rook piece that is set there. Here we start to see that he's definitely cracking under the pressure of the grief that he's feeling, and of course the feelings that he has for Eris. And he's pretty much semi-hallucinating her and pretty much imagining that he can see her throughout the time. Now remember, this is when Drifter doesn't know that she is still alive within her throne world, or that would be coming back to us in any capacity. So he's still dealing with a large portion of the grief. Page 5. Restlessness. He swings by to let the man in charge know he's going to be out of town for a while. Guy'll understand. And it's a new level of responsible. Commander should appreciate that. The place is empty, though. He wanders around it, sets the beads to clicking against each other, prods the gold figure on the side of the table until it falls over, meanders past books, and blinks at the cat perched on a shelf over his head. Nothing. He's restless. The longer he stands still, the longer the grief has to get its hooks into him. He mutters a curse into the silence and sees himself out. This one, again, very straightforward, is for the puzzle piece that was found in Zavala's office over on the shelving on the right when you first enter. And of course, it goes through some of the little areas like the Newton's abacus in there. And then, of course, the statue and everything within, giving us some little details. But it also shows that he's having this feeling again, probably which is why he's named himself the Drifter. He's having this push to continue moving. If he sits still for too long, he's being complacent too much, and he's getting caught up in all of the feelings and the mess. Page 6. Preparation. There's a hidden little nook in the hangar. Great spot for watching sparrow maintenance if that's what you're into. Comfortable too. Good place to get away from the noise. He breezes in and out, rooting up a cache he left there a long time ago. Never could get out of the habit of keeping emergency stashes. Anywhere else he needs to stop off before he leaves for good? Maybe. Maybe. It's a short hop from here to his ship. This here is in relation to the Dido room that is in the hangar, as there was a chess piece in here that you had to get to, and to get to this room you have to go travel throughout the ventilation system in the hangar to get there. I was kind of keen on this hidden stash idea, because I was thinking to myself, well, Cade had hidden stashes and we can find it and get some, some funny little stuff out of it. So I wanted to go back to try and check, and I didn't find anything. If you yourself find something, please do let me know in the comments and try and tell me whereabouts. Maybe I missed looking, but I don't think Bungie put anything there since they already put the chess piece in that room. But this is showing where, Drifter does know his way quite around in the tower. Not that anyone is surprised. He pokes around way too much for everything, so this was kind of expected. But this also, again, proves to the fact that these are all putting us along Drifter's path before we completed the story. Page 7. Reconsidering. Getting out in the woods could clear his head. Maybe he shouldn't go after all. Familiar energy reading. Not darkness, not light, but the in-between stuff. Sterile neutrinos. Makes him think of a time way back when Moondust and him and the arrival of the Pyramid Fleet. This and the following page, I'm pretty sure, is in relation to the locations of the chess pieces out and about over in the EDZ. There was one where if you follow the river, you go towards the little gulch area where there's the darkness energy spilling up out of the floor, the grassy floor, and there was a night piece right there. Then, in the following page, it'll talk about the cliffside in the EDZ, where there was another night piece to be found there as well. Page 8. Committing. There's a little cliff that overlooks the cove's water. He settles there for a spell. It's quiet, not a lot of combat, few enough reasons for guardians to swing through. The quiet doesn't so much remind him of her as make him wish she were there. Everything's just going to keep doing that, huh? He can be honest with himself about that. Alright, one last stop. Like I said, this is talking about the overlooking cliff in the EDZ that just looks over the water and kind of gives you a brief little look. And like he said, not a lot of combat, the brief little spars here and there from the little, public event that's right nearby. And that's kind of the reason for the Guardians to swing through every now and again. This here, though, I do feel like he's making more of a reference to the same feelings he had whenever Orin, who we now know as the Nine's messenger from prophecy and other instances, went to go find the Nine originally. Orin was Drifter's previous fling out in the galaxy when he still went by Wu Ming, which again is a funny name to me for Drifter because Wu Ming in Chinese literally translates to no one. And so he was naming himself no one even whenever he was having his feelings and his relationship with Orin before she decided to break things off because Drifter did not believe in going after the Nine. He felt that it was far too dangerous and it was a crazy mission. That we have a cutscene that I have gone over in previous videos, so definitely go watch some of my other Drifter theory videos because I do have that from Destiny Content Vault in there as well for you to go ahead and see the cutscene where Orin finally pushes him away and says, "This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing." Reminiscing. He goes into her apartment this time, not to look through her things, really, just prove it to himself. She's not there. She won't be. He's got to remember that. He brushes his fingers along a side table and tries to imagine what she'd say to him. This one for page 9 is a very clear reference to the first pawn piece that everyone found in Eris's apartment that was right on that center table and on the side of it, and it was quite large and impossible for us to miss and pick up. This is showing that this is the point where Drifter came along and is finally telling himself that the last stop is to give himself some closure before he supposedly and very easily, understandably makes the decision to leave because he is gathering his stuff. He's taking some last minute thoughts, and he's going to drift into the universe once again. Page 10. Imagining. Probably it'd be something deep and meaningful. He doesn't have the heart to think it up. He steps into the other room, moves around the table covered in books and relics, almost trips on the rug. This one is in relation over to where the shaping slab is in the room that's on top of a bunch of the books. And I'm pretty sure that's where the rug is that's kind of piled up and tumbled up there. I'm going through the locations here as best I can, unless they're ones that I'll be honest, I couldn't be bothered to travel all the way to because they take a little too long for these to get prepared for Wednesday. That way I'm not working on them throughout the week. But I'm pretty sure this is where the rug's kind of bunched up so you can see where he tripped. And that's pretty much where that leads there. Page 11. Final curtain. Someone else finds him there. He sees himself out, mouth stinging as he takes the stairs. That's it. That's it then. There's nothing for him, and he was a fool to think there was. Time to go. This coincides with the book reference I mentioned before, where he gets into an argument with Sloane about essentially Sloane is telling him that he shouldn't leave. We need him here. We need him to defend the city. It's what Eris would have wanted. And they get into a back and forth that eventually leads with Sloane just clocking Drifter in the face and knocking him back. And this is the moment immediately after when he finally sees himself out. And that's where it mentions his mouth is stinging because he was flat punched in the face. There's no other way to put it. For Drifter, he was very much just punched. And to be nice to everyone, I'll go ahead and read the lore page that this all connects back to for that final moment. This one's a bit longer, but it also gives you the breakdown of everything that I described before, in case you wanted to hear the whole page. If not, easily skip past this part onto what we discuss afterwards, as we'll get into the cutscene itself. Eris's apartment was close and dark, and it smelled so strongly of incense that Drifter could barely breathe. But he sat alone, his elbows on his knees, staring at the harsh green glow of her Ahamkara bone. "You know what I want," he whispered, "so go on." There was nothing. He gripped it between his hands, his mouth curving into a harsh frown. He raised it, shook it roughly, then held it close to his face. "You hear me?" he hissed. Nothing. His shoulders slumped. He held the orb loosely, his eyes closed, and thought of her. "Be careful with that," Sloane said. He looked up, startled. The deputy commander stood in the threshold of the door. She let her eyes wander for a moment, her jaw set. She lived like this? Drifter didn't respond. He stood, placing the Ahamkara bone back on the table, then made his way to the door. Sloane blocked him with her body before he could leave. He met her eyes, expressionless. "Where are you going? We need to talk," she said firmly. "I got nothing to say," he replied. "Yes, you do." He took a few steps back. "You can't walk away from this. Too much is at stake here. The city relies on you. You have to be ready for when you're needed." "Haven't you all taken enough from me?" he muttered. "You're not walking away from this." "Yeah, I am. You gonna stop me?" Sloane grabbed him by the collar. He lifted his chin in challenge. She raised a fist. "You wouldn't," he started just before it came down on his face. Sloane let go of his collar. Drifter staggered until his back was against the wall. He flinched as he touched his nose, his fingertips coming away bloody. Then he grinned with red-lined teeth. Been a while since I earned one of those, Drifter said, his voice trembling. His smile faltered quickly. He wiped his bloodied upper lip with the back of his hand as his ghost appeared beside him, coming close and staring mutely with his red eye. He batted it out of the way and left the room, bleeding. Don't go too far, Sloane called after him. Drifter didn't stop walking. So, obviously, with what I had mentioned prior, this is the whole moment that kind of really set the tone for Drifter for a bit up until we realize that Eris is alive. But let's move on to the actual cutscene, the implications, and where I think we might be going. There's two options I have, or they could end up being the same thing, and we may be in for a much wilder ride than I was initially anticipating.
Grief's a funny thing. Some folks get stuck in it, frozen in place. It holds them hostage. And some folks, well, some folks just run. I went far. I had to. I couldn't look at the moon. The way I see it, the farther you run, the less likely you are to get stuck. But this universe tends to stop me in my tracks. One way or another. Something's out there, hero. It's throwing rocks at our window.
Now, of course, with this cutscene here, there's a lot to unpack. I think that the place that Drifter has gone to, he talked about not being able to look at the moon. That could be two separate things. It could be the mention that he did actually leave because he couldn't look at the moon because Eris's nickname for him is Moon Dust, and her being gone didn't make any sense. He may have returned somewhere that he already knew, or what we could be looking at is where the Nine reside. He went to the Nine to ask for help, in terms of his asking for help and getting any kind of help and trying literally everything to bring Eris back. But I also think there's two additional things that could be very, very, very indicative of where we're going. In the cutscene, it looks like whenever Drifter is traveling to this place, he may be going back and forth through time or using the Taken and Ascendant planes to propel himself forward, which is also messing with times or different realities because whenever he goes through the rings, his appearance seems to change. He seems to have no beard or less facial hair. He's got some locks in front of his hair. He looks a bit different. And I think what we're seeing is the difference between when Drifter was Wu Ming and the Drifter we know now. So, obviously, even with the Edge of Fate trailers in the corners, there are the words Kepler and Chicago. Kepler, as we know, is the location of where Exodus Black and Failsafe were headed with their crew before Siva shot them down and forced them to land on Nessus in a crash. Kepler, if I remember correctly, though, is quite a few light years away, like millions of light years away. So, in order to get there without anything changing in our current timeline, we would absolutely have to use some sort of time altering travel in order to arrive there, which would also make sense as to why the Nine reside in that area, because they are out of the way, and if you even make the bother to make it that far, you have to do so many manipulative things to the universe to get there that it's the definition of paracausal. The other instance that I thought of is that planet the Drifter killed his fire team on could be where we're headed. If we are, though, we know for a fact that light cannot survive on that planet or near those enemies. So there has to be some new way that we'd have to combat those enemies and actually come to fight whatever threat comes next. However, I do believe that the threat is one of the nine, because the division weapon has a lore card specifically describing that they are arguing. The nine are having a division between them, which is why the weapon is called such, and they are essentially going to war with one another. And one other big piece, and why the chess pieces have come to light, which I greatly appreciate people on Twitter for bringing this back to the forefront. Our good friend Ashermere, yes, the one we've seen in the Node Avalon missions from seasons and seasons ago, as well as throughout Destiny 1, said a long time ago, there's a chess game being played here, and someone doesn't want us to see who wins. So it looks like we are finally coming to the conclusion of that chess game and are going to be shown who wins. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of dive into the Drifter. I know this is a bit of a longer video, and I'm going to try and scrunch it down as much as I can. Probably going to use less of me actually traveling throughout the Sol system here to get to the locations of where the chess pieces are, and just give you guys more of like a brief, like, hey, here's where it would have been. That way it's easier for you guys, maybe shrinks it down a little bit, helps me get this out by Wednesday at a decent time for me. But if you guys like me diving into Drifter's lore, please do leave a like on the video, and of course give me any of your theories, your comments, anything you enjoy whenever it comes to the Drifter himself, with being such a mysterious force in our system. And it looks like I was right in my previous video. There's a lot of unfinished business that surrounds the Drifter, and we're finally getting around to maybe clearing some of it up. Of course, if you guys enjoyed any of the B-roll, or of course want to see more, I do stream on Twitch every day except for Thursdays and Sundays, so we stream 5 out of 7 days, and I would really appreciate you guys coming over, giving a follow, because we're on our way to 1,000 follows here. And I did want to give you guys a quick thank you here for 500 subs here on YouTube. We're on our way to 1,000 subs here as well. And as long as I keep up the grind, I'm sure we'll be able to make it there someday. So thank you guys again so much for watching and taking the time to hear me yap about one of my favorite characters in the story and how convoluted everything surrounding him is. And hopefully with Edge of Fate, we'll get so much more clarification, and I will be so much more excited to continue to talk about everything that's connected to Drifter. Other than that, though, guys, I will see you all in the next video, and hopefully the week goes well for you. Later.